sometimes we hear other Christians, no, also going through mental uh, health problems, no. So does it equate to having a weak faith, or in general, mahina siya, mahina ang loob niya? How would you address that connotation or comment?
Yeah, I think Tina talked about faith as a resource. So faith definitely in God provides us many, many things to cope with the problems and the challenges of life. But if I have a lot of faith, it doesn't mean I will not catch a cold. So just like the physical
Yeah.
can be ill,
Yes.
the psychological, emotional is likewise.
Yes.
It's not the amount of faith I have in God, but it's just that this is another dimension of my being, which happens to be unwell or a little bit sick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes there are trigger events. We try to cope up with, pressures and so forth. No? I'm not sure if you have seen a dripping faucet outdoors.
Yeah.
No? So it's dripping water, a drop at a time.
Yeah.
And the ground is concrete. Then after a long time, you see the concrete now not flat.
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
little dip,
Right.
right? So one drop, two drops, 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, 10 days. Now it starts to destroy actually the concrete. Dripping water lang. I think most of us probably have seen that. So sometimes it's like that. I'm bullied on day one.
Right.
I'm bullied on day two. I'm bullied every day, but I have to go to school.
Okay.
That's the dripping faucet. It may appear soft, but if you do it steadily for a long time,
Right.
I cannot cope with it.
Okay.
My solution maybe is to get out of this situation, like refuse to go to school or ask for a transfer, and my
Right.
parents says, "Oh," or I just end my life because I don't want to go, and nobody wants to move me to another school.
Right.
So this trigger event is victimization. You're victimized. You're targeted. And at first you can bear with it, but then after a long time you kind of give way, like the concrete giving way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that emotions are a part of us, and just like the physical health can be damaged, the emotional health can also be damaged to a person of faith or to a person with no faith.
Boksu, in the Bible ba, was there ever a record of a Bible character or Bible characters who underwent mental health disorder to the point that, they were not themselves anymore? Or is it different? Is it possession already? What are the differences in terms of spiritual aspect?
In the Bible, we have people who are depressed, but not clinically depressed. It means they're just very sad.
Okay.
It's not a psychological disorder situation. So people who are very sad, we do have that. So when we say depressed, we mean it like not clinical,
Yeah.
right? Regular, very sad depression, that type. And then, of course, in the ministry of Jesus, we find people who are not themselves. But these are not psychological disorders. If it's a psychological disorder, we deal with it as a natural disorder. But if it's a supernatural disorder, then you have to deal with it supernaturally. So some years ago, I was asked to help a student who was in university, I think first or second year. So she was suffering a very serious disorder, but they cannot identify whether it's psychological or supernatural.
Okay.
Now she's in another city. So I told the friend that if we have to help her, we have to go to her. So we actually have to fly over there to meet with the girl. And then after about maybe 2 hours, I came to the conclusion that it's not supernatural.
It's psychological.
It's a natural disorder. So she should be treated but she should be removed from that Canadian city and relocate to her home country where she can be treated better. The father flew in from China and cannot speak English, does not know anyone in the city. It's not a big city. It's one of those small cities, you know. So it's really difficult. So that one is natural. So they have to have a psychologist or a psychiatrist deal with her. There was also suicidal tendencies and all that. I think it all happened when she visited a Buddhist center. And there was sort of a Buddhist ate. I don't know if she's a nun. I don't think she's a nun, a lay person. So basically, it was a psychological fraud situation. And so this lady eventually was asking for, I think, 200,000 Canadian dollars to treat her.
Wow.
So it's fraud, but she's very skilled in psychological manipulation and deception. So the girl actually believed that if I fly in a plane, I will die. So she refused to leave Canada. So natural lang yun. In another case was I received a call that there's a lady who's almost 30 years old. I can't remember, 27, 28, 29. Went to an Ivy League school in the US, is an atheist, does not believe in spirits and demons, but eventually suddenly cannot control her actions. So it happened like few minutes, then 30 minutes, then it became 2 hours. So she's now a disruption at work and was sent home. So they asked me to talk to her. So the father and the daughter came and the 2 Christian friends.
Yeah.
And so I brought this young girl to my study with my English pastor and one of our elders, the 3 of us. So basically, after about maybe 10 minutes, I think it is a demonic situation. So it cannot be dealt with by the psychologists in the Canadian clinics. So you have to deal with it as a spiritual encounter. So eventually it took 2 days to liberate her. And eventually the whole family became Christian, disposed of all their idolatrous paraphernalia, and it was okay after that. But this is happening so frequently in Canada, which is supposedly a very advanced, scientific, wealthy country.
Right.
Pastor Andy, who's a graduate of Asian Theological Seminary, was ministering in Alberta among First Nations. First Nations means the original inhabitants. In America, you call them the Indians. In Canada, we call them First Nations because they were there first.
Oh.
First Nations. So First Nations always, very frequently, have encounters with aliens and UFOs. And they believe they're from outer space. And they have all this in their historical art,
Yeah.
where you have something flying in with wings and that. And these are supposedly spirits and then eventually aliens. Then one time, there was a very big Indian guy. He was out of control. And then he rushed at Pastor Andy, straight to him. Pastor Andy is a strong person, but not as big. So he simply extended his hand like this and says, "In the name of Jesus." And the guy froze. And he walked away like that. His hands frozen. He was coming to beat him up, right? Then walk away. That's not psychological. If it's psychological, somebody is in the hospital now. Right? But Canadians believe that it's aliens, that it's something scientific. Once you say alien, outer space, you hear the word space, extraterrestrial. These are very scientific words.
Yeah.
And they want to deal with it naturally. Of course, you will never solve the problem.
Yes.
You're on another dimension. The problem is not there.
Can I connect it to, because you're talking about aliens and, things out of the ordinary, supernatural. So do you consider some of our brothers and sisters who may be going through mental health problems to also be battling some spiritual warfare within them? Is that possible?
That has to be determined case to case. So, because a psychologist who's from a secular institution in Canada would probably say split personality,
Oh.
schizophrenic. They would probably use that. and say, oh, we are dealing with two personalities. Sometimes this one, sometimes that. For me, as a psychologist and as a theologian, I want to test first whether there's a spirit involved. That's always the first step. Diagnosis. Once you know, then you deal with it at that level, in that dimension. So it's possible. Sometimes there is a demonic dimension,
Yeah.
but not always. Case to case.
Right.
Okay. So Tiong Yao, si diagnosis must be correct because sometimes, like the fraud, the Canadian, the Buddhist,
Buddhist
fraud, yeah, diba? And naniwala the person that you were saying. So sometimes we also have to be, I think, mindful, no, of what people say to us. Thank you for joining us today in our discussion. We hope we were able to enlighten you in some of the issues you are currently facing. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a note in the comment section below. We would also like to take this opportunity to invite you to come and worship with us every Sunday here at Jubilee Evangelical Church. We have English services at 8:30 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., Amoy service at 10:30 a.m., Taglish service at 2 p.m. You can also join us online through our FB and YouTube channels at 3 p.m. For more information, you can visit our website at jec.com.ph. Thank you and God bless us all.